Good evening, residents of Sembawang GRC and fellow Singaporeans. Thank you. In the past few days, when our team are doing our campaigning and interaction with our residents in Sembawang, we've came across many different cases and witnessed the living conditions at the bare minimum of certain residents. For example, we met a pioneer citizen who just had an operation, and despite living in a 5-people ward, after all the so-called subsidies and benefits that are deducted, he still have to pay $3,000 cash to top up the balance. He questioned me, 我们的那个部长说8块钱就可以动手术，真的吗？我3000块钱呢，都不是动心脏的，是脚而已。I didn't know how to reply him, but I told him, if you send me into parliament, 我会去问这个部长。All of these problems that we have met come down to our very root cause, which is the inequality gap among Singaporeans. Our government has never seriously addressed this issue before. Singapore is ranked the 5th easiest country where politically connected businessmen are most likely to prosper, which is, by the way, a lot of our ministers and MPs, who hold 65 directorships. According to a study by Wilkinson and Pickett, the gap between the rich and poor in Singapore is among the highest in the developed countries around the world. Now, in 2011, a minimum wage policy was introduced in Hong Kong, and the poverty line has therefore been redefined. In 2014, the Singapore government has also set a basic minimum wage of $1,000 for cleaners and $1,100 for security officers. But these are only to be implemented in 2016. So, what's the use of it? You only know how to talk. We don't see it getting implemented. Do we want a government like this? Talk with no actions. However, did they also consider that by 2016, the level of inflation would have also increased? So by the time this is already irrelevant. Just last year, according to the Economist Intelligence Unit, after a decade of steadily climbing up from the table, from the 18th place, Singapore is now ranked the most expensive city, replacing Tokyo. 这个我们就升得很快，钱又没有看到我们升，工钱也没有升，我们的住宿环境也没有升。So, why do we need such a government? Why do we need to vote such a government into the parliament? In the Household Expenditure Survey 2012 and 2013, the average monthly income of the lowest 10% is estimated to be $1,000. But their average expenditure is $1,800. Where do they get the remaining $800? They cannot rob the bank. They cannot steal money. They grow from the grass. Loan shark 也是犯法的现在。So go and loan from your MP. So don't vote them into parliament. The HDB policy was one of our best policy implemented by our government in the 1960s. Even though public housing was for the poor, but it was first implemented by the British, who built the Tiong Bahru and Tanglin Halt public housing. This is a very good policy that was implemented back then. But the introduction of the resale market was the first major mistake that they make. Now our home ownership policy is becoming an investment policy. By introducing this, we have let the market manipulate the price of the HDB. If the resale market continues to sell this back to the HDB, the price of our HDB would not have increased significantly over the years. This housing is for Singaporeans, not for investment. HDB has forgotten their main objective, which was to provide housing to the people of Singapore, not becoming a property developer. Today, and over the past few years recently, they start to focus on building more premium housing. We have the BTOs, DBSS, ECs, playing with all the alphabets, which was clearly a direction they shouldn't have taken. Because with this direction, the price of our HDB has not only increased tremendously, but also affecting the price of private housing. Singapore is now a business hub, not our home anymore. Tell the PAP we want our home back. The NSP would like to remind the PAP and our dear Minister of National Development, who happens to be in this GRC. Please be reminded, why was the HDB introduced to the citizens of Singapore from the beginning? Please remind yourself every day before you implement other policies. Another biggest challenge at the moment that we're facing is social integration. The high proportion of foreigners in our midst with different cultures, practices, and expectations has brought over severe strains on social fabric. The negative impact of our quality of life, as perceived by Singaporeans, cannot be ignored anymore. This is not what we asked for. Now, to improve this situation, the NSP believe that we first need to address the issue of insecurity felt by certain segments of the population. We should look at the population as a whole and not just certain segments. We move together as a country, as a whole, and not leave anybody behind, especially Singaporeans. Now, the fear of being displaced or sidelined by our own country, the fear of losing jobs to Singaporeans, to foreigners, is increasing. Why are Singaporeans having such a fear in your own country? This is not supposed to be like this. We therefore need to tackle this through our labour and immigration policy first, before tackling this form of social development perspective. In addition to how work permits or employment passes are approved, we need a greater transparency on the criteria of awarding citizenship and permanent residency. It's not based on the economic growth that you give out your citizenship and PR just like this. You're not even giving money out so easily. Why are you giving out our citizenship so easily? Why are you diluting the Singaporeans? This country is called Singapore. Like I said, such criteria are not purely just economic. Social factors like cultural similarities, languages, and relations with citizens should also play an important part. Our taxation has been increasingly regressive over the past 2 decades. GST was introduced so that the top income tax rate and corporate income tax can be reduced. The PAP government has finally recognized that it is time to reverse the trend and increase the top income tax rate in 2015. Now, NSP firmly believes that the government needs to play a redistributive role and reduce income inequality. More can be done to further increase the top personal income tax rate and cut the GST. The estate duty is a tax on the estate of the very wealthy. The poor should not be paying for this. The government is making them richer themselves as well. It has the effect of mitigating the accumulation of wealth through generations by redistributing part of it, making the playing field a bit more level for the next generation. NSP would like to advocate that this tax to be reinstated. Facing all these situations, the income inequality gap, the overcrowded population, the CPF, and many other situations, many of us has felt helpless when facing these situations. And why can't our government put in more reserve and more resources to help these Singaporeans, not helping the foreigners? We vote for a government to serve the Singapore citizens. We vote for a government with the interests of every Singaporean. If the less privileged are able to catch up with the rich, then the impact of the rising cost of living would not be so acute. In this way, Singaporeans as a whole will get to live more happily and have a sense of belonging to their country. We want to feel home to our home. We don't want to be a foreigner in Singapore. In the past few rallies, these few days, the PAP says that the future of Singapore is at stake, and we cannot afford 5 years of trial and error to vote an opposition into the parliament. But if our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents did not give PAP 5 years of trial and error in 1955, there will be no PAP today. They owe this to the citizens of Singapore. Why did I say this? Because the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew first campaigned as an opposition member in the 1955 elections. Singapore started off with a voice from the opposition. At that time, he did not have track record of governing a country, and many of his team members were not highly educated or elites. Some of them are hawkers, some of them are barbers. But our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents were visionary to vote them in and give them 5 years to prove themselves. If they cannot make it, they will be voted out in 5 years' time. This is the beauty of our general elections. Why can't you give NSP 5 years of chance to prove to you that we can do better than the PAP? We are only asking for 5 years. If we can do better, you can give us the next 0 to have 50 years to bring you a better place in SG 100. been enjoying for the past 50 years. Our ministers, our prime ministers, our MPs, living with a good life for the past 50 years. That is enough. Like what you say, 够了. So Singaporeans, you definitely deserve better than this. Please vote for NSP. Please vote for a change. This is a change that you need right now. I remember yesterday when I was speaking in my rally in McPherson, I mentioned about a family that we visited in the Sembarang GRC area. I also posted her story on my Facebook page. If you have seen it, you would have known the difficulties, the struggles that she is facing. And immediately today, she wrote to me, "Oh, my PAP grassroots wrote to me and they say, we can come and visit you and help you or assist you in any way if you need." Hey, hello! PAP, what have you been doing for the past 50 years? She's a 20 years old girl. So what have you been doing in the past 20 years of her life? Why are you only showing her up now when an opposition voices out her story? You are paid 16,000 a month, not to only work during election time. You are paid to work every single day of your 5 years to serve the residents, to make sure none of them are left behind. Our past Sembarang GRC MPs had 4 years of time, but they did not even find out about this story. The NSP Sembarang team had only used a short 8 days of campaigning period, and we have found out so many stories that are not being addressed by the PAP. What have you been doing? What is worse is this guy wrote to the girl and say, "We will send our grassroots leader to see you and talk to you." I don't need to see a grassroots leader. I vote for an MP into the parliament. I want to see my MP, not a grassroots leader. My MP is paid 16K to work for me, to serve me, not a grassroots leader. If a grassroots leader can solve my problem, anybody can be the PM now. We don't need any more MPs. What is the MPs there for? Why are we wasting 16K a month paying them when the grassroots leader can do their job? Where does this money come from? From you Singaporeans. I hope you can think over on the cooling day, and when you vote on September 11, think carefully for your children, your grandchildren, and the many generations to come. Think if you want them to enjoy their life as well and be able to retire comfortably. Again, Singaporeans, you deserve better. It's not a crime to vote opposition. You have the absolute right to vote for an opposition. If the police say you will be caught if you vote for an opposition, they are lying to you. Please don't believe them, because all your votes are sacred. All your votes are secret. Nobody will know. If they know, means they committed a crime. You can easily sue them with no problem. Please vote for NSP and vote for the change that is badly needed now. Thank you.